Welcome to Lead the Way with Anna Gouker. Your guide, Anna Gouker, is on a quest of her own to find effective ways of creating change and inclusion in our communities. You have come to the right place if you believe in truth, justice, and coffee. Thanks for joining us.
We have something special for you this episode, something outside of our typical routine, which I'm really excited to share with you. I recently had the pleasure of speaking with Joy Willenbrink-Conte. She is a music therapist and music therapy instructor at University of Dayton. This was the perfect moment to have a conversation about health and wellness and how to be our best in a time that is very chaotic and stressful for so many of us. I appreciated so much the opportunity to speak with Joy and learn some techniques from her. I really can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So let's get right to it. This is Joy Willenbrink-Conte. Well, thank you so much for making time for us today.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up, and what memories stand out for you the most from growing up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Wisconsin, in Kimberly, Wisconsin, so the Fox Cities area. And I love that question. What memories stand out? Let's see. I mean, I think I have a lot of memories of just playing outside growing up, like playing with neighbors in our backyard, and doing other things in the neighborhood, playing soccer and going swimming at our local swimming lake. Yeah.
What was Kimberly like? I'm not familiar.
Yeah. What was it like? I think how I would describe it now is definitely shaded by like, my knowledge and situation now. But, as a child, I think I just thought it was a really comfortable kind of small town feeling place. As I think about it now, I think it's a very Midwestern, like people are kind but passive, and and there's a lot of homogeneity, like a lot of it's a very white area, and like Christian and things like that.
Is it still pretty small?
Actually, no. I mean, I think it's become more. I actually describe it to people, the area, as like a suburb without an actual urban city center. It's kind of just, I think the area has become a little sprawly and it kind of has the feel of a suburb, but there's no like big city at the center, if that makes sense.
Do you remember growing up, like what you imagined your future would be? Like, did you have a dream job when you were growing up, or ideas about what you were going to be when you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was asked that question as a kid, like children are in school and things, I think some of the things that I, at various stages of my life identified as something I might want to be were artist or singer or teacher. So some of those facets are definitely, significant parts of what I do today, which is kind of cool to think about. but yeah, I mean, I think I have this memory of being a kid and saying, maybe I could be a president, be the president of the U.S. Right, like a first woman president. So I would not want that role. I would love there to be a woman president, but
It's still up for grabs.
yeah. So I think I had a range of aspirations, but yeah, some of the I think like common themes of how I would respond when I was asked that question are like totally a part of what I identify as my career today.
You're pretty consistent then.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's awesome. I was super all over the place. I think I wanted to be a fashion designer was probably my first idea, and then somehow eventually I wanted to be a criminal profiler. I think I watched a TV show about it, so I was like, I could do that for sure.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it was just definitely bouncing around, but you were right on a similar track all the way through. How did you kind of navigate that? Do you remember how you decided what you were going to study in college and how you found that?
Yes, I do. So actually, I don't know. Are you familiar with kind of like it's some sort of um, personality assessment tool where you answer all these questions and then the computer spits out at you all of these careers
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like these are some careers that might be good for you. Yeah. So I think it was my freshman year in high school, we had an assignment where we had to take one of those assessment tests and then like do some research and write a paper or something about a particular profession. So music therapist was on my list among a bunch of other things, but I thought, wow, like I didn't know what it was and it sounded interesting. So actually through that project, I like must have done some research to kind of figure out what music therapy is. And I don't think for that project, but actually later in high school, like it was this career idea that I kind of held on to. And at some point in high school, I reached out to a local music therapist and sat down and like had a chat with her over coffee or something and asked her a bunch of questions and just to get a clearer sense of what music therapy was um, yeah, and then I was like pretty committed. And thankfully my parents were supportive of that because like they definitely had no idea what it was as a profession either. So but yeah, I actually applied to all schools for college that offered music therapy. Yeah, and so I feel fortunate that along the way it felt I felt like, yes, I'm still invested and interested in this path. So I know it's not always like as straightforward or like linear of a process for people, and I like respect that too. But yeah, it was definitely very like as I took classes, it kind of affirmed my interest and passion in the field.
People are super busy and not always receptive to the idea of just like sitting down and sharing their experience or what they've learned throughout their career. Not that people don't want to do that, but I think that for a lot of people, schedules are tight and that's not always feasible. Do you remember what kinds of questions you asked?
Uh, Not really. I think I'm assuming I asked a little bit about like where she worked and like the types of things that she did. Like what do you do as a music therapist? But yeah, I really can't remember the exact questions besides that she was just like really gracious. Like you said, people are busy, but I think she was really gracious with her time. And I remember her being a really down to earth person. So yeah, I do find that in the field though, because music therapy is a smaller profession and it's lesser known than some other fields. I feel like music therapists tend to be pretty like we're used to, I guess, talking about what it is we do. And so I feel like hopefully I've kind of like passed on the gift that I received from her, with trying to do the same thing now that I'm a little older and more experienced.
Well, you totally read my mind then. Tell me, how do you become a music therapist, and what is it, or how would you describe it to someone who is not familiar with music therapy at all?
Hmm. So the process to become a music therapist, it depends on your country. It's a little different in some different countries around the world, but in the U.S., it's a bachelor level entry field, meaning there are accredited undergraduate music therapy training programs across the country. And to become credentialed, or what our credential is, a board certified music therapist in the US, you need to attend one of these programs that's accredited. It's typically like a 4 to 5 year bachelor's degree. And then integrated into that is what might be called field work, preclinical training, or field work, or practicum. So you get some exposure to what it's like to practice music therapy, but you do that with a lot of supervision of someone who's already a credentialed music therapist. And then there are a number of other courses. So a lot of music courses, psychology courses, music therapy specific classes, and then probably some other courses depending on your institution. Like the school where I teach, we have a pretty significant like humanities core. So, students still have to take science classes, and then they have to take, history and philosophy and a religious studies class. So that's kind of what the degree looks like. And then after that, everyone also has to complete an internship. And this is more intensive field work. And you kind of transition from having a lot of supervisor to support to a little less as you progress. And it's usually a 6 month full time internship, like 6 months of 40 hours per week. And then you're eligible to, if that's successful, like you get your internship director's stamp of approval that you're developing and kind of where you need to be. Then you're eligible to sit for an exam, and it's a national certification exam. And you take a test. It's a written test, and you pass, and then you obtain, or you've met the criteria to be credentialed in the US as a board certified music therapist. And then we have continuing education requirements too. So you have to, kind of like teachers and other healthcare professionals, we have to keep learning. Like there's always more to learn, and you never just know everything. Certainly can't know everything about music or about people, because music, like people, are always changing, and culture and society is always evolving. So so you do some continuing education to maintain that credential. So that's what it takes to become a music therapist. And then there are masters and actually just a few doctoral music therapy programs that exist out there. And those, might give you capacities to work in advanced or like deepened ways with people. And there are some like advanced models of music therapy practice that you could study. kind of beyond that foundational level. Um, so that's the education training side of things. And then how I define music therapy, honestly, I kind of think about who I'm talking to. I really do think about who I'm talking to, and that kind of affects how I describe it. But generally, um, I might say something like music therapy is health focused, and it's engagement with music experiences to support improvements in health and well being. And so, what that therapy looks like is really different depending on who you're working with and the context. Like if it's one on one work, if it's group work, if it's in a treatment institution, or if it's in the community. Um, and then, like, what are the strengths and needs and music preferences and music background of the people you're working with? That also um, should really shape what therapy looks like as well.
I don't know if this is way off, but like, so would you say music therapy is specially designed to address a certain concern or a certain type of struggle that someone might be going through, or is it kind of tailored to whatever someone's experience is, and you can modify things? And I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say the latter. Like, um, so yeah, it really should be kind of shaped to the person or the people, and like, you know, their needs, but also their strengths and resources, and like the context too, what community, um, what kind of cultures you and the folks you're working with are situated in. So yeah, it really is flexible. I mean, just like other forms of therapy too are really kind of different depending on who you're working with and where you're working. The same with music therapy. And the distinction with music therapy is just that like music is involved. And, we're either making music by, singing or playing instruments, using electronic instruments. We might write music or like compose music, listen and respond to music. So like take in sounds or songs or music. Yeah. So somehow that's involved. And then often there might be some verbal discussion and processing too, that's integrated into music therapy. But it kind of depends. Yeah, it depends on who you're working with.
You're practicing and you're teaching.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And you teach at university. Um, but I was curious, like, for the people that you work with in your practice, do you encounter certain concerns more often, or like, what do you see as being kind of prominent right now in mental health and what people are going through?
Yeah, yeah, so I teach at the University of Dayton, and like through my role as an instructor there, I also get to supervise, like, and so some of my teaching is really being out in the field, working with students, as they kind of practice what music therapy is. And I do some modeling and collaborating with them, and then kind of let them go a little more solo with me there for backup. And then my practice. So yeah, the past couple years since I started this teaching position, I've been working to develop my own practice, and it's like outpatient private practice. So I guess to your question about what kind of needs am I seeing, I through this practice I've worked mostly with women or teen girls. Um, and a lot of their needs are really related to like emotional well-being and social well-being. So, improving capacity to manage like relationship stressors and feel more empowered to really be themselves or set boundaries or communicate their needs in the context of relationships. Um, as well as just managing stress and anxiety in improved ways, boosting self efficacy and self confidence, um, accessing empowerment. So a lot of those, like mental health, right? Like social and emotional health needs, is what I'm really focused on right now and the folks that I'm seeing.
You mentioned before that when you were growing up, you had kind of a natural draw towards artistry and thought that that would be part of your future. Were you always musical?
Hmm. Um, it's a really good question. I mean, I definitely started band whenever I started playing saxophone when that was an option, um, in school. And I was a pretty shy child, so I started singing first, like through I think I maybe in at school, like in music class, ended up having some sort of solo or something in our holiday concert and at church actually. And I remember getting a lot of positive feedback, but also being like super nervous about singing. So I definitely wasn't that child who like goes out and sings and dances in front, when you have company over. Like I definitely was not that person. So I'm not really sure if as a little kid I did a lot of singing or musical exploration, but definitely like once I got involved with band and like later in life I had space to do band and choir like in high school. That became a really important part of my life, and I really enjoyed it. I think actually because I always kind of saw myself as a more introverted person, I always felt like, wow, I get to really tap into this confident, um, perhaps more outgoing version of myself when I was singing or making music. So I think it was really important for me like in my own growth as a person. And it just, I think, became a more and more important part of my life as I got older. But I guess I do remember though, like loving, like with other people to make music, like sing along to music with my parents and siblings at home. I just don't think, yeah, it was more, maybe that's it. It was really more of a communal experience. I enjoyed that feeling of being a part of a choir or, dancing with my family with music on the record player or playing in a band or something like that.
When you're working with your students now, how do you know or what do you say to them when they're debating about their career? Like, do you have like a certain test or rule that you tell people, like, this is how you know that
Mm.
you're on the right path and music therapy is for you?
Oh yeah, I wish that existed. That would be nice, right? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, well, most of my teaching involves work with students that have already decided they want to pursue music therapy, but definitely people, join later in life or, later in their college experience, or decide this isn't for me and transition into something else. So yeah, I mean, I guess it feels really important to me to try to be as honest and like transparent as possible. So because it is it's not like my decision, right? And while I think, oh, this person may make a wonderful music therapist, like if they don't feel their heart in it, or they're not feeling passionate about it, then that's totally their choice and responsibility. So yeah, I think when I've been in like advising situations with students, I just try to share like what my experiences have been like, what's been really helpful and supportive for me, but also what difficulties or challenges I've encountered in the field. Um, yeah, and just like help them, I guess, figure out like what do you really value, and to know that like your life trajectory, like there's gonna be some meandering, and things are gonna change, and so it's never too late to try to come back to the profession, or to pursue music therapy and then decide you want to do something else. So I don't know, that's a that's a really roundabout answer, but yeah, I try to just support people, and maybe sifting through and figuring out what they really want to pursue in that, at least at that time.
I keep bouncing back and forth between like you as a teacher and you as a practicing therapist. But so back to therapy.
Yeah.
What's a typical session like?
Mm.
Is there a specific format that you follow, or is it always different?
Yeah. I mean, we use the word "it depends" a lot in music therapy because, as I've already explained, like, yeah, so much of it is really different. Yeah, well, so I think generally when I'm working with teens or adults, whether it's individual or group work, I think I usually try to start with some sort of a check-in process. So um, even though I may have worked with someone, for a year, or a month or something, and have a sense of kind of what they're working on or what they want to be working on in music therapy. As our sense of well-being, our mental health fluctuates, right? So it's really helpful, I think, to kind of have some sort of a check-in process, kind of see what is really important or significant that's going on for the person or the group right now, and get a sense of how they're feeling, how they're doing in that moment. And often that really helps me then to figure out where we might go for the remainder of the session. So that check in might be really verbal, like a lot of discussion. Sometimes it might be a really musical process. So just this week, actually, with some students, we had a first music therapy group session with some young adults. And we played all together on some instruments. We improvised, so made music spontaneously for a little bit, and then they all of us actually took a moment to kind of check in with how we were feeling emotionally, bodily, and I invited everybody, if they were up for it, to choose an instrument and express how they were feeling or doing through playing some music. So improvising spontaneously on instruments like drums, shakers, wooden instruments, a lot of culturally specific kind of like instruments from all over the world that are really fairly accessible. So like even if you've never played an instrument before, you could play an instrument like this. And Yeah, and that was kind of helpful to see how everybody was doing and feeling, and also get a sense of how they make music, and how comfortable they are with their voice, or using their body. And so, whatever form it takes, that check in can be really helpful. And then we kind of move into the core of the session. So, like, maybe we're working on something that we've been working on for a while, or maybe where I decide we should something from the check-in came up that seems really significant. Let's use time to really focus on that. Um, and then I also try to make a point of having some sort of closure at the end of the session too. So especially if whatever we've done in therapy has been really evocative or kind of intense, um, providing some closure to that, again, like musical or verbal, can be really helpful. So, a session I had last night, actually, we did a lot of verbal discussion, and it was really, I think, cathartic. Like, it was a good release, but we talked about some pretty difficult and big stuff. And so, I asked this person if they had like a resource song that they wanted to listen to, like a song that really provided a lot of strength or comfort. And we just listened and kind of sang along with the recording of this song to wrap up the session, just so that they had like this little, boost of support musically, and also a way to kind of give closure to what we were working through in the session.
For the closure piece of it, can you say like what you typically use, like for a music that would help people feel that boost and sense of like how to carry this into their lives after the session's over?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in this case, it was using the person I was working with, like her preferred music. So a song that was meaningful to her. I actually wasn't familiar with it beforehand, but it's one-on-one work. And so yeah, we do a lot of listening to music that's really important and significant to her. Um, but actually, with the same group I referenced just earlier, I'm thinking of this because it just happened this week. It was a small group of us, and for closure, we actually ended with a chant that I quickly taught the group, and so that can function really well for closure. So a chant meaning, it's pretty simple, a song structure, but that's really simple, maybe pretty short, maybe a fair amount of repetition, and so it's accessible. But kind of similar to like a mantra, it can really be something that you can hold on to, like a melody or some lyrics that, because they're simple and repetitive, you might find yourself humming it the next day. And this particular chant, had kind of this nice message about, uh, well, it's actually called, the chant I'm thinking of is called Standing Like a Tree by Betsy Ross. And so it has this nice symbol of a tree as a source of strength and, connectedness, groundedness. And so, yeah, so I use that as a way to give some closure to the session and kind of give everybody there something to hold on to and maybe take with them beyond that hour that we had together.
Are you able to share that chant with us?
Yeah, I can. And I have to say, I hope my version that I'm about to sing might be slightly adapted from Betsy Ross's original version, but I'll sing what I taught this week. Yeah, sure. And well, I guess it doesn't work to sing together on Zoom really, but if you wanted to feel the beat or, hum along or something, that's totally cool. Yeah. Standing like a tree with my roots deep down, my branches wide and open. Come like the rain, come like the sun, come like the fruit to the hands that are open. I am standing like a tree with my roots deep down, my branches wide and open. Come like the rain, come like the sun. Come like the fruit to the hands that are open. I am standing like a tree, Standing like a tree, standing like a tree.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yeah. So as you can see, it kind of like actually like this circle of nature and life. It kind of like could keep going. So in the context of a group or something, we could repeat it as many times as it felt meaningful to, and it's kind of cool the way it loops together like that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you said that you kind of use that the way people talk about mantras.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think, like when I think of a mantra, yeah, it's like something that offers you support or a reminder, maybe, and just because of the simplicity of it, um, or the capacity to kind of repeat it in a meditative or prayerful kind of way. Yeah, I feel like a chant can function similarly. And the cool part too is that because there is melody to it. Like when you're singing, you really breathe differently, and your body is engaged perhaps more fully than just speaking. And so that's really cool too. And it actually helps us like remember, right? So like the vocal melody can help us hold on to something and retain it too. So that's another useful facet of any song. But yeah.
How do clients find you?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the places that I've worked, I was employed by an institution or a treatment facility, and then music therapy was just offered as a regular service for folks, engaged in treatment there. But now for this private practice that I have, which is quite small, but I have a profile online, so like if people search for therapists in Dayton, they might see my name and could see, oh, this person is a music therapist, and so that's how I've gotten um, contacts for this private practice. So it kind of depends on the type of work that you are doing.
And for people who may not be able to pursue that right now, what is a helpful tip that maybe people could learn and do on their own?
Yeah, that's a great question because actually, because music therapists in most parts of the US are not licensed healthcare providers, we're credentialed. It can be really hard actually to access services that would be covered by insurance, like in an outpatient or community oriented way. So yeah, accessibility, I mean, like other health services in the US is a big issue, I think. So yeah, I mean, uh, folks could ask about music therapy at any treatment institution or treatment facility that they already are using. Um, and maybe by asking if there isn't a music therapist there, that treatment facility might be able to look for one or make a referral for services. I think, for instance, in a school setting, like that could be really valuable. So, for instance, a student that has an individualized education plan, if their team thinks that music therapy might be a really meaningful therapy, then perhaps they could see if music therapy could be written into their IEP. Um, Yeah, so I guess, talking to existing healthcare providers and asking for help getting linked up with a music therapist could be a really good avenue, because hopefully those folks have a bit more knowledge and information and also could connect with networks where where they might be able to find a music therapist. And I would also just give a pitch too. So music therapy, it kind of falls under this umbrella of creative arts therapies. And I feel really strongly that there's really good reason that engaging with creativity, creative processes like music and art and movement, among other creative outlets, drama can be really valuable. And so, music therapy might not be a perfect fit for everybody, but there are also other creative arts therapies out there, like art therapy, movement, dance movement therapists, drama therapists, that could also be really a wonderful resource for someone.
Are there certain skills um, or like tools that you would teach a client to take with them, and then like, okay, you are ready to take this out into the world and you are equipped with everything you need to cope with life's struggles? Like, what maybe are some things that you often teach people that they take with them?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, because I mean, really, the growth, like that. Well, I really believe when someone shows up to therapy, like they do the work, and yeah, I might be there to offer support or guidance or resources, but they're really working, and they're working like inside and outside of therapy. So yeah, there really is great value to maybe learning more about how music, or other creative strategies could be really helpful to you for your own well-being. Yeah, so I mean, to give a few examples, like um, I might encourage people to really notice how music that they listen to impacts their mood, because as you probably know, it's like sometimes music, like it's not always uplifting. Music doesn't always decrease our stress. In fact, sometimes it can intensify a difficult feeling, or actually stress us out. So like really paying attention to, and learning about how music impacts you, and then you might be better equipped to listen to music that's going to be supportive in a moment. So if I'm feeling really sad about something, kind of going through some grief or some loss, helping myself know, do I need to listen to music that really lets me feel this sadness and lets me kind of express it? Or would that actually not be good for me right now? Do I need to listen to something that helps me modulate my mood? And so, yeah, that's something I think that could be a really valuable skill or practice for people to kind of like notice how certain music impacts them. And then they can just be empowered to make more intentional choices. And it's different for everybody, right? Like the music that really empowers you might not do the same for me, or music that I find to be really, really sad, you might not think it's sad or melancholy at all. So that's something. But beyond that, like I think, yeah, there's so many other possible skills that someone might develop. So just getting in touch with their playful side and creative side. As adults in this world, we're not always encouraged to play and like be spontaneous and be free. And so sometimes we might have to kind of rekindle that childlike joy and energy. And so doing that could open up doors to do that more, either musically or like in other ways in your day-to-day life. Writing music, that could be a process that someone really enjoys in therapy, like writing their own songs or composing instrumental music, and they could do that, without the guidance of a music therapist, certainly on their own. So yeah, I think there's all sorts of potential to really develop some resources that then the person takes with them, and like you said, might get them to a point where they're like, I don't need, I'm ready to terminate therapy. I don't need music therapy anymore. I've got kind of what I need for to be able to manage life's stressors, and cope more effectively perhaps in the future.
Let's say like someone is maybe going through a hard time, and I think that we can all relate to the fact that everything happens in seasons, and we all kind of have a time in our lives where things are going pretty smoothly and we feel good about the direction that we're headed. But then there's also a pretty common experience where we have a struggle phase, a phase where we're kind of like not feeling our best or not doing our best, but we just aren't quite in a place where we want to make the time or the commitment to see a therapist. I don't know. I guess I'm not totally sure what my question is, but I'm just kind of like envisioning this hypothetical person and like how we can maybe encourage someone to take that step, or even if you have advice on how you know that you have enough time and energy to make the step to be committed to therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Because I think especially when things are really difficult, like you said, if you're in kind of a difficult or challenging season or period, um, that might be a time when you need the most support. And it's also the most challenging to ask for that support or be able to access it. So it's
And it
really
seems
tough.
like that's when people oftentimes withdraw, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is a really clear answer. It kind of like is addressing the problem from another angle because, like you said, yeah, people might withdraw or feel more isolated during those periods. And I think, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had more community resources like readily accessible in the US? So, um, maybe more accessible music therapy groups, but also like other sorts of social support too. Because I also am really a proponent that music therapy and therapy can be really beneficial, but likewise, other sorts of social or community support can be really meaningful too. So, maybe someone is not ready or interested in therapy, but like, maybe they join a choir at their community center or something like that. And that really functions as like a huge resource for them, just being with other people around some sort of shared purpose and making music. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, like maybe just like thinking about systems and community spaces and how they can offer more opportunities for people to access resources and networks in place so that people know about said resources, or people who notice someone might be kind of slipping or in a difficult place could help them connect with something that might be beneficial, whether it be just like community music making or music therapy or another type of therapy. I think, yeah, that would make such a big difference.
Well, thank you so much for making time once again, and I'm so glad that I got the chance to talk with you. It was a long time in the making, and this has been so great.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Yeah, it was really great to finally get to connect, and thanks for your questions. It was really nice. You asked some really deep and thoughtful questions that I appreciated.
That was Joy Willenbrink-Conte. thanks so much again to her for taking the time to speak with me and share with all of us her experiences, advice, and techniques for having optimal health and wellness. I know I got a lot out of the conversation, and I hope it inspires you to explore different creative outlets and ways that you can improve and enrich your experience. Special thanks to Buzz Kemper for his voiceover artistry in the opening. This episode was brought to you by the time and talent of Tyler Willenbrink. I'm Anna Gouker. Until next time.